The time for warnings is over. Ukraine's retaliation has begun. Today, Vladimir Putin made one of the costliest miscalculations of the war, a decision that backfired almost instantly. After ordering a massive strike on Ukrainian cities, Russia was about to face something it hadn't truly experienced since the invasion began. War coming home because this time, when Russian missiles targeted Ukraine's power plants, Ukraine struck back with something even more devastating. The largest drone assault of the entire conflict. And this counterattack didn't just hit infrastructure, it reached Moscow itself, both physically and psychologically. It began with another night of terror over Ukraine. Yesterday, Russian forces launched what analysts described as one of their most intense bombardments in months. Over 650 drones and 52 missiles, including 6 ballistic missiles, rained down across Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's air defenses managed to intercept the majority of them, but not all. A few made it through, and the results were tragic. At least 3 civilians were killed, among them a 7-year-old girl, and 27 others were injured. In multiple regions, Russia deliberately targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure, power plants, substations, and transformers, trying to plunge millions into darkness as winter approached. The blackout was widespread, and the psychological toll was immediate. That night, President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered his nightly address in complete darkness, a symbolic act that captured Ukraine's resilience. He spoke to the nation by candlelight, saying, "This is outright terror. Normal people don't wage war like this. The world must respond appropriately to such Russian warfare." The Kremlin's reaction was predictable. Russian state television mocked Zelensky's address, playing clips of darkened Ukrainian streets and sneering at what they called a nation in blackout. Their anchors ridiculed him for standing in the dark, calling it proof that Russia's campaign was working. But the celebration was short-lived, because just weeks earlier, Zelensky had warned Putin publicly, if Russia attacks Ukraine's energy grid, there will be blackouts in Moscow. That wasn't a bluff, it was a warning, and today, Ukraine delivered on that promise. Within hours of Russia's bombardment, Ukraine launched the single largest drone attack of the entire war. To understand the scale, on a typical night, Ukraine might send 50 to 200 drones toward Russian territory, mainly small kamikaze units designed to disrupt logistics and military bases. But this was different. From the very start, observers knew something massive was unfolding. Drone flight maps lit up across open-source monitoring channels, a wave so dense that even analysts couldn't count the total. At first, estimates ranged from 250 to 400 drones, but as more footage poured in and Russian Telegram channels confirmed impact reports from multiple cities, the number became clear. This wasn't hundreds. Estimates ranged from 700 to 800 drones, a saturation-level strike on a scale never before attempted by Ukraine. And the targets weren't random. They included industrial facilities, fuel depots, and power plants deep inside Russian territory, including the Moscow region itself. Sirens began blaring across the night sky in Russian cities. Residents woke up to the sound of anti-aircraft gunfire, explosions, and the buzzing of drones overhead. Footage shared on social media showed Russian air defenses lighting up the night, bright streaks cutting through the sky as gun-based systems tried to intercept the swarm. These weren't guided missiles, but tracer rounds and heavy machine gun fire, cheaper to deploy but less effective against a mass assault. In military terms, this was a saturation strike, a coordinated drone swarm. When hundreds of drones attack simultaneously, even the most advanced air defense systems can't shoot them all down. Some always get through, and that's exactly what happened here. Russian officials, as usual, claimed a 100% success rate, saying every single drone had been shot down, and that any damage visible on the ground was caused by falling debris. President Putin himself echoed that line, insisting that no Ukrainian drones had reached critical sites, but the images told a different story. In Moscow, entire neighborhoods lost power. Footage showed residents standing in near-total darkness, staring at the skyline where explosions had just occurred. One witness described it simply, "It flew right over my head. The whole house shook. I thought it was an earthquake." What followed was a chain of secondary blasts, one of which struck a major power facility near the capital. The explosion was so strong that it shattered windows and sent shockwaves through nearby buildings. On Russian state television, this was described as an emergency incident. But in Kyiv, President Zelensky reportedly saw it differently. Mission accomplished. Putin's debris, as he called it, had effectively taken out one of his own power plants. But it didn't matter how the Kremlin tried to spin it. For the first time, Russia's capital was facing the kind of vulnerability it had imposed on others. Millions of Russians now understood, in one cold night, what Ukrainian families had felt for nearly 3 years. The strikes didn't end there. Just days later, an unrelated meteor explosion over Moscow lit up the night sky. A freak celestial event that Russian social media dubbed a warning from above. Fragments reportedly fell across several districts, leaving many residents shaken. Later that week, a massive fire broke out at a car dealership in the city. Footage showed columns of black smoke rising over Moscow's skyline. Authorities called it an accident. Others saw it as another sign that Russia's infrastructure and morale were crumbling. Across the country, small fires, power outages, and transport disruptions spread. Not all caused by Ukraine, but all amplified by anxiety. For ordinary Russians, it felt as though the walls were closing in. Inside Russia, state media moved quickly to shift blame. Instead of acknowledging Ukraine's strike or their own military failures, Kremlin propagandists pointed fingers at NATO, calling the attacks part of a Western plot to destabilize Russia. One TV host said, "Their main goal is to damage our economy. They understand that they need to wear us down economically. That's the language the West has moved to." Another added, "They will try to provoke unrest inside the country. There are plenty of sleepers here who, for a Big Mac and Coca-Cola, would sell their own mothers, let alone the motherland." This rhetoric has become a coping mechanism for the Russian state, blaming the West for everything from economic decline to domestic fires. But what's new is the tone. Even propagandists now sound defensive, uneasy, and aware that the war is no longer distant. What makes this retaliation significant isn't just the damage, it's what it represents. For the first time, Ukraine has demonstrated the ability to hit Russia's power grid and infrastructure near its capital. This was once thought impossible without Western long-range missiles. Ukraine achieved it using home-built drones, modified commercial technology, and months of target intelligence. The message was unmistakable. If Russia continues to strike Ukrainian energy plants, Ukraine can and will do the same inside Russia. That's the very definition of deterrence. And it's forcing the Kremlin to confront a new reality, one where the costs of its aggression are no longer confined to foreign soil. Inside Russia, ordinary citizens are now paying the price for Putin's choices. As electricity outages spread, so did frustration. With winter temperatures dropping, heating systems across parts of the country struggled to stay online. For 3 years, Russians watched the war unfold through the comfort of propaganda screens, distant explosions, and faraway suffering. Now, the blackout is in their own living rooms. Politically, it's also a turning point. Moscow has long tried to project invulnerability, claiming control of the skies and dominance over Ukrainian territory. But this week shattered that illusion. The psychological impact that Moscow can be hit, that power plants can fall, that no defense is perfect, is perhaps even more powerful than the physical damage itself. And yet, much of the mainstream Western media stayed silent on this retaliation. While networks covered Russia's missile strikes and Putin's nuclear rhetoric extensively, Ukraine's successful counterattack received minimal attention. Maybe it's fear of showing Russia's weakness, or of celebrating escalation. Or maybe it's just a lack of access to footage that major advertisers find uncomfortable. Whatever the reason, stories like these are exactly why independent coverage matters. In the broader context, Ukraine's drone strike marks a strategic evolution in modern warfare. Low-cost, mass-produced drones are now able to overwhelm even large states like Russia, and they're rewriting the rules of deterrence. Economically, the damage to Russia's grid will take weeks to repair. Psychologically, it signals that Ukraine, despite years of bombardment, still has both the ingenuity and the resolve to strike back. For Russia, this is a nightmare scenario, a long winter ahead, growing domestic unrest, and the slow realization that the war it started may no longer be one it can control. The message is simple. Putin's campaign to freeze Ukraine has now turned into a campaign that could freeze Russia. As one Ukrainian soldier put it on social media after the strike, winter is coming, but this time it's coming for them. So the question is, will Putin escalate again, or finally realize that the cost of this war is circling back home? Because, as this week proved, the era of one-sided strikes is over. And from here on, every blackout in Kyiv may bring another in Moscow. We cover exactly these moments, stories mainstream outlets avoid, footage advertisers refuse to air, and analysis that doesn't fit the narrative. We built our platform from scratch, without ads, without filters, funded directly by viewers like you. If you want to see unfiltered coverage from the front lines and understand the real shifts shaping this war, visit basicsinsider.com or use the link in the description. Your support helps us keep reporting what others won't.